that's really, and I think that's what we all have in common. And I believe the thing I have in common with every alcoholic in this room is, that strange little mental twist, that strange mental twist that makes me forget what happens the last time I drank. And I had a number of consequences. I lost a job. I was very, very bad at, I didn't even really have relationships. I made very poor decisions about certain things. I found myself in dangerous situations. At the end of my drinking, at the age of 27 or 28, my life became very small. A 3-block radius. I'd lost my job at a restaurant full of alcoholics, and somehow I was the worst of the worst one there. Which was, I had a great resentment about that. But in some ways, my alcoholism affected me more. I think I was just not very good as a functioning alcoholic. I had a lot of suicidal ideation and a horrible attitude, and I was just really miserable towards the end. So I lost a job, and I had to sublet my apartment and move into my mom's basement. I'm a Sunset girl, so I was in the Sunset. My life became a 3-block radius where, basically this is what a day looked like in the last 2 months of my drinking. Is I would wake up at about 3 p.m. I would smoke pot. I would binge eat, things like that, until the bar up the street opened. So around 6 or 7, I would head up there. That was like about 2 blocks away from my house. And then I would drink. And I was a chemist, so as I was saying, I'm a comfort-seeking missile, so I was seeking the comfort of the first and second drink. I was seeking that comfortable, warm place, and I didn't want to get too drunk, and I didn't want to get too gacked out. So, I had a routine, and the routine involved having a couple drinks at the bar, going to the bathroom. I was very, calculating about this, and it's amazing I even enjoyed myself at all, because it took a lot of mental energy to even, kind of figure out the right formula, right, to do. But I kind of had it down towards the end. I do a couple lines. At a certain point, I have to start taking Vicodin. Then, around 1 a.m., midnight, 1 a.m., I would go next door because I met a guy who lived next door to the bar. And so I started sleeping with him. And you would think this was the best setup. I didn't have to work. I didn't have to pay rent. Literally, I go to the bar. And it was fun for a week, but I kept doing it for a month and a half. And then, when he wanted to sleep, I would go back to my house. And I was, like I said, I was always scared as a short girl and didn't want to lose control. But living 2 blocks in a kind of quiet neighborhood from the bar, I really let myself just drink and walk around, stumbling home, at 4 in the morning. And at that point, I would lock myself in the bathroom of the basement and smoke cigarettes, do lines until 6, takes 3 or 4 or 5 Vicodins, and I did that and wake up the next day at 3. That was my life. And it was like that every day. Maybe I think I took 1 day off for the Lord. No, I didn't do that. But I think I maybe took 1 day off every once in a while. But for the most part, that's what it looked like for 45 days. And then I ended up in the hospital. My body got septic. I found I was throwing up a lot, and I didn't realize until 2 years into program when I heard that initially. I was like, oh, right. I used to throw up all the time when I was drinking towards the end. My body just started rejecting it. I ended up in an emergency room, and thank God for that, because I found out about a rehab program, so I went to rehab. I went to a program called Kaiser CDRP, Chemical Dependency Recovery Program. I did that, and they made me come to AA, and I was not happy about that. I wasn't happy about that because the first meeting I went to was in the facility, and there were 3 people there, 2 of them and me. 2 of them were in my group, and one of them was an intensive outpatient person who was the secretary, and God bless him for coming and setting up and doing that. But it didn't really give me a really good sense of what Alcoholics Anonymous is like. And so all I saw and heard during those meetings were the word, God, God. And it was like a slap in my face. I wasn't an atheist. I culturally identify as Jewish, and I was brought up, and I went to Hebrew school. But for the most part, and I was definitely always kind of a spiritual seeker. I just was very scared of the word God and very scared. I like that part about, I think, we agnostics, or someplace in the first 4 chapters talks about we just kind of pushed aside the whole idea of God. We didn't like to think about it or deal with it, and that was my case. And so suddenly And I had certain prejudices, which means old ideas, a prejudgment. I had certain old ideas about Alcoholics Anonymous. No, excuse me. I had certain old ideas about the word God, people who use the word God, particularly the people who use the word God and call him Father with a capital F, and H with a capital, him or his with a capital H. Like, I really associated that with a group that I did not belong to, and I really was very scared. I was very angry, and the anger came out of fear. Fear that something bad was going to happen, that I was going to, I don't know, a lot of it was just the fear of the unknown, and that, people would want me to believe something or do something. It was really hard to pinpoint, but I knew I was very uncomfortable with the word God. But a couple of things happened that were quite significant, and this is the good stuff. This is a part of my share I really enjoy talking about. And what I hope is the most useful for anyone who's new, which is basically how I came to feel comfortable in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, how I became comfortable with the idea of God, how I had my own spiritual awakening. And so what happened to me was, a couple things happened to me, but at some point early in my recovery, while I was still in that program, I went to my old restaurant, and one of the managers who I knew she didn't drink, but I didn't know she was a member of AA. But she basically saw me with a schedule and said, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she's a wonderful woman, and she's like, let me circle some meetings for you. And she saved my life, because she circled a meeting called High Noon, and she told me to go to that meeting. That meeting met every day. And, the thing about High Noon is when I walked into that room, it could not have been any more different than the meeting I had been to in that little facility with 3 people. It was a huge meeting. There was a lot of different people. I'm a very, I can be a very superficial, shallow person. So there were a lot of attractive people and people who looked really cool, and there were a lot of cute boys. And I was like, yeah, I can come and be a part of this, every day. This was kind of exciting for me, from going from my small little world of, 3 blocks to this bigger world, and in the mission. And what I like to tell people is, if you go to a meeting and you don't like it, don't give up on meetings. It's just like going to a bar. If I went to a bar and I didn't like that bar, I didn't stop going to bars altogether. I found a bar I liked. And in many ways, I think meetings are kind of like bar culture. I think alcoholics bring that with us, where each neighborhood has its own flavor. Each meeting kind of has its own little style. So you can find the dive meetings, or you can find the nice, posh meetings. And you can find a meeting where you feel comfortable and where you identify, and just grab your stool, And instead of grabbing a stool, you grab a chair. And I also like to say that the other analogy that I like to say about meetings as bars, going to meetings and just going to meetings and not working the steps is like going to a bar and not drinking. It can kind of be fun, maybe for like a week or so. You can kind of sit there and talk to people and hear some good stories. But for me, I went to bars because I wanted the relief. And I wasn't really even able to enjoy a bar unless I had that relief from drinking. And that's what the steps are. The steps are relief. So, if you're going to come to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, get some relief and work the steps with the sponsor. And as far as I'm concerned, if I'm being offered a drink for free, I want top shelf, right? If someone's going to offer me either top shelf or well, right, for the same price, I'll take the top shelf. And for me, a top shelf relief in AA means working the steps with a sponsor who knows that big book really well and wants you to work the steps and doesn't really want to do much else with you than work the steps. So, I had my first sponsor was a coffee shop sponsor, and God bless her, and she did her best. And to me, a coffee shop sponsor is we met at coffee shops, and she let me talk for like an hour. Whew, God, she patient. I mean, I'm surprised, she didn't go out. And then I got a sponsor who, worked the steps with me, and that was amazing, and that was wonderful. And then I found a home group after a couple years of people who really knew the book well, and that really took my recovery to another level, because that was amazing, and I learned a lot about alcoholism, and I think it's made me a much more useful sponsor.